My name is Mindy Briggs, and I'm 35. 5 years married, and it still amazes me how quiet a house can feel when the person next to you has stopped wanting you. Not hating you, not yelling, not slamming doors. Just not wanting you. And somehow that's worse, because there's nothing to fight. No villain you can point to without sounding dramatic. Just you, lying in the dark, staring at the ceiling, wondering when your husband quietly turned into your roommate. It took me 2 solid years of hearing the same sentence, 5 words that somehow grew sharper every time, to finally accept it. I'm too tired tonight. Sometimes he added a babe at the end, like a bandage. Like a pet name could soften the bruise. It didn't. When we first got married, it was the opposite. We were that couple, the annoying newlyweds who couldn't keep their hands off each other, the kind people rolled their eyes at during dinner parties, because we'd be touching under the table, brushing knees, smiling at private jokes like we were afraid the other person might disappear if we let go. Late nights, morning sessions, random Tuesday afternoons when the world outside was loud and stressful, but inside our bedroom, everything felt simple. Back then, I honestly believed we'd beaten the system. You know that smug, newlywed confidence? The one that whispers, "We're different. We won't end up like those couples who look past each other in restaurants like strangers." Yeah, I had that. The change didn't come like a cliff. It came like a leak, slow, quiet, almost polite. At first, he'd come home exhausted. Fair. We both had demanding jobs. We both worked long hours, chased promotions, carried stress that followed us home like a shadow. So when he said he was tired, I believed him. I didn't push. I didn't want to be the needy wife who made everything about sex. I told myself, this is what a good partner does. You support. You wait it out. Except waiting it out turned into a lifestyle. What started as not tonight became maybe this weekend. Then this week's been brutal. Then I've got an early meeting. It got so predictable I could have scheduled the excuses on a calendar. Friday nights after work, too tired. Saturday mornings, when we used to sleep in tangled together, suddenly he was up early doing laundry. Sunday evenings, needed to prep for Monday. There was always a reason, always something that sounded responsible enough that arguing felt selfish. And he knew that. Because every time I tried to initiate anything beyond a goodnight kiss, he'd sigh, the kind of tired sigh that made me feel like I'd just asked him to take out the trash. I'm too tired for intimacy. Sometimes he'd reach for my hand afterward, like a consolation prize. I'd lie there with my body buzzing with rejection, listening to him fall asleep like nothing had happened, like he hadn't just turned me down again. Around month 18, I started keeping track without meaning to. 2 weeks of nothing, then 3, then a full month. Lying next to my husband while my mind ran circles around itself. Is this normal? Do other married women live like this? Am I being unreasonable for wanting my own husband to actually want me? The worst part wasn't even the physical need. It was the mental gymnastics. Every rejection shaved a little more off my confidence. Maybe I wasn't attractive enough. Maybe I'd gained weight. Maybe I'd become boring. I started checking myself in mirrors the way people check for bruises, pulling at my shirt, examining my waist, staring at my face like the answer might be hiding there. And then I'd hate myself for doing it, because I didn't want to be desperate. I just wanted to be wanted. Eventually, I worked up the courage to bring it up like an adult, a real conversation. No jokes, no passive-aggressive comments, no sighing in bed. One night, I sat across from him at our kitchen table, the same table where we'd once eaten takeout while making out between bites like we were still dating. Now it felt like a negotiation room. "I miss you," I said carefully. "Not just physically, I miss us." He didn't look angry. He looked uncomfortable, like I'd brought up a problem he'd been hoping would solve itself. "It's work," he said. "I'm stressed. Once this big project wraps up, things will get better. Temporary." He said it like a promise, like there was a finish line. I believed him, because believing him was easier than imagining he was choosing to drift away from me. 2 months later, the project ended. Nothing changed. The excuses just evolved. Too stressed, too distracted, headache, stomach hurts, early meeting. Different words, same outcome. Same me, lying awake at 2 a.m. wondering what I'd done wrong. I tried everything. I read articles about rekindling romance like I was studying for an exam I didn't sign up for. I planned fancy dinners at the Italian place where we had our first date, made reservations weeks ahead, wore perfume, dressed up, tried to recreate the version of us that used to exist. I brought home flowers on random Tuesdays. Not anniversaries, not apologies, just flowers. I booked a weekend at the coastal town we loved, the one with the lighthouse view, spent money we didn't really have because I thought a change of scenery might wake him up. I tried being more helpful around the house too. Maybe he was tired because I wasn't pulling my weight. So I did more dishes, more laundry, took over groceries, cleaned without being asked, folded his shirts the way he liked, even though it made my back hurt. I thought, if I lighten his load, he'll have energy for us. Nope. It just meant he had more energy for everything except me. Every attempt ended the same way. Me staring at the ceiling, chest tight with the kind of loneliness that shouldn't exist inside a marriage. Him sleeping like a man with no unfinished business. The rejection hurt less when I stopped trying. But when I tried, when I planned something special, got my hopes up, imagined us laughing and touching again, the disappointment cut deeper. Like getting punched in the same bruise over and over. Our 4th anniversary broke something in me. We went to an expensive restaurant downtown, the kind with cloth napkins and servers who describe every dish like art. He looked good, navy shirt, easy smile. Across the table, candlelight flickering, he laughed at something I said, and hope sparked in my chest like a match. Maybe tonight's different. Maybe he wants me again. The drive home, I held my breath, afraid wanting it too much would jinx it. We got inside. He kicked off his shoes. I stepped toward him, heart pounding, trying to read his body language. I'm too tired tonight. Long day. Just like that. No hesitation, no guilt, just the line. I didn't argue. Didn't ask what was wrong. I turned around, got into bed, and stared at the ceiling, while the $300 dinner replayed in my head like a cruel joke. That was the moment something in me flipped. Not into anger. Into clarity. I lay there listening to him move around the room, get ready for bed like nothing had happened, like he hadn't just rejected me on our anniversary. And I realized something terrifying. He wasn't worried, because he'd gotten used to me absorbing the disappointment. That night, I made a decision. If he was too tired for intimacy, I was done trying. Done begging, done fixing, done making myself vulnerable just to be shut down. I didn't know if our marriage would survive. And for the first time in years, I wasn't sure I cared. The next morning, he leaned in for our usual kiss. I turned my cheek slightly. Not dramatic, not cruel, just not participating. He blinked, confused. I smiled, grabbed my coffee, and headed for the shower. My new approach was simple. Stop reaching, stop performing, stop asking to be loved. I wasn't cold, I wasn't mean. I just stopped investing. 2 weeks later, while we were doing dishes, he finally asked, "Are you okay?" I rinsed a plate slowly, my voice calm. "Yeah, why wouldn't I be?" He studied my face like he didn't recognize me. Because he could feel it, the shift. What he didn't know yet was that while he thought I was fine, I had already started leaving. Not with a suitcase, with my heart. The strangest part about stopping was how quiet my own head became. For 2 years, my thoughts had been a constant loop. What did I do wrong? How do I fix this? How do I make him want me again? Like a radio stuck between stations, all static and self-blame. When I stopped trying, that noise faded. Not all at once, but enough that I could finally hear myself think. I didn't announce some big declaration. I didn't threaten. I didn't give ultimatums. I just redirected my energy. I still went to work, still paid my share of the bills, still did my part around the house. I just stopped orbiting him. No more planning special nights. No more checking his mood before opening my mouth. No more waiting around on weekends like maybe this would be the day he suddenly felt close again. If he talked to me, I responded. Polite, calm, neutral. If he didn't, I didn't chase. The first real change happened at the gym. I signed up after work one Tuesday, more out of spite than self-love. I needed somewhere to put the frustration that had been rotting inside my chest for 2 years. The first night, I pushed until my legs shook, until my lungs burned, until the only thing I could focus on was breathing and not thinking about him lying next to me at night like I was invisible. The exhaustion was real, honest, earned, not the fake tired he'd been feeding me. So I went back the next day, and the next. 5 days a week turned into 6, sometimes twice a day on weekends. My body became the outlet for every rejection I never allowed myself to scream about. After the first month, I hired a trainer. His name was Marcus. Straightforward, no nonsense, didn't ask questions about my marriage or why I was suddenly obsessed with deadlifts and interval training. Monday, legs until I could barely walk. Tuesday, arms and shoulders. Wednesday, back and core. Thursday, full body circuits that left me dripping sweat. Friday, cardio until my vision blurred. Saturdays were long runs. Sundays were supposed to be rest days. I usually went anyway. Being tired on my own terms felt better than lying awake resenting someone else's. My body changed fast. Muscle where there used to be softness, shoulders stronger, waist tighter. I had to buy new clothes because my old ones didn't fit the same. The mirror stopped being an enemy. Sometimes I'd catch him watching me get dressed, standing in the doorway, pretending not to stare, that confused look on his face like he was trying to reconcile the woman in front of him with the wife he'd been ignoring. Good. Let him notice. 3 months in, I started reclaiming the parts of my life I'd quietly given up. My friends had stopped inviting me places years ago, not because they didn't care, but because I always said no. Can't. He wants to have dinner together. Maybe next time. We were supposed to spend the weekend together. Together doing what? Watching him scroll on his phone? When Alyssa texted about a Saturday brunch, I said yes without checking with him. I didn't ask permission. I just told him I'd be out. He looked up from the couch, surprised. Oh, okay. Like I was a roommate, letting him know the bathroom would be occupied. Fine. Tuesday night yoga became a thing. Thursday evening photography walks downtown. I joined a local photography group that met Sunday mornings. Street scenes, architecture, people passing by with whole lives that didn't revolve around my marriage. I bought a second-hand camera and fell in love with it. I started noticing light again. Shadows, reflections in windows, small, beautiful details I'd been too busy hurting to see. My calendar filled up. My life expanded. And for the first time in years, it didn't include him at the center. The first time he noticed wasn't dramatic. We were doing dishes side by side, the way couples do when they're trying to look functional. You've been busy lately, he said casually. Yeah, I replied. Feels good. He paused, like he was waiting for more. An explanation. An apology. I gave him neither. 2 weeks later, he finally asked the question. Is everything okay with us? I dried my hands, turned to face him. Calm. Grounded. Yeah, why? He frowned. You just seem different. Different how? I didn't ask it out loud. I knew the answer. Different because I wasn't asking anymore. Different because I wasn't reaching. Different because my happiness no longer depended on whether he felt like loving me that day. I'm just focusing on myself, I said. The words landed heavier than I expected. His eyes widened. What does that mean? It means exactly what it sounds like. I stepped past him, grabbed my gym bag, headed for the door. That night, he moved closer to me in bed, not trying to start anything, just proximity, like he'd suddenly remembered I was there. For a split second, my body reacted on instinct, years of conditioning. Then my brain caught up. I stayed still. Didn't encourage it, didn't pull away. I refused to take crumbs again. 6 months into my transformation, things shifted outside the house too. My confidence at work skyrocketed. I stopped second-guessing myself, stopped shrinking in meetings. A promotion came out of nowhere. Same company, new role, more responsibility. People started listening when I spoke. Funny how that happens when you're not constantly questioning your worth. Meanwhile, his behavior started to change. Little gestures at first. My favorite breakfast showing up on Saturdays. Text during the day. An arm brushing mine in the hallway. I acknowledged each one politely, warm but contained. I'd been here before. This wasn't connection, this was reaction. The more I detached, the more he seemed to notice me. 8 months in, he tried harder. Candles in the living room, music playing, an outfit I hadn't seen in years. I walked in from work and stopped short. What's the occasion? I asked. No occasion, he said, a little too fast. Just thought we could spend time together. We sat across from each other, not beside each other. That space felt important. He laughed too loudly at my jokes, touched my arm too deliberately. Everything felt rehearsed, like he'd watched a video titled How to Win Your Wife back in one evening. When he leaned in to kiss me, I didn't pull away. I just didn't meet him there. He froze, confusion all over his face. What's wrong? He asked. I held his gaze, calm, steady. Why now? What do you mean? After 2 years of being too tired, why now? The silence stretched. His face hardened. I thought this is what you wanted. There it was. Not I want you, not I miss you, but I want things to go back to normal. This feels like you trying to get my attention back, I said quietly. Not like you actually want connection. He stood up abruptly. That's not fair. I'm trying. Trying now that I stopped trying, I replied. He left the room. I stayed there, sitting between half-melted candles, knowing something important had just cracked open. Because that night confirmed what I'd been afraid to admit. His sudden interest wasn't about desire. It was about fear. Fear of losing control. And that's when things turned cold. Not explosive, not dramatic. A quiet, exhausting Cold War. He'd switch between affection and withdrawal when it didn't work. I stayed steady, not cruel, not accommodating, just done performing emotional labor for both of us. And then one evening, looking for our bank account on his laptop, I found the emails. And everything I'd suspected finally had words. I wasn't snooping. That part matters. My phone was dead. His laptop was sitting open on the kitchen counter. I just needed to check our joint account. Rent was due, and I wanted to make sure the transfer had gone through. That's it. I typed in the password I'd known for years, pulled up the bank site, confirmed the balance. And when I minimized the browser, there it was, an email thread already open. Subject line, about life and marriage. My stomach tightened before I even clicked it. That little voice in my head, the one that had been right far too often lately, whispered, "This is it." I hesitated, I really did. There's a line you don't cross in a marriage unless something is already broken. Privacy, trust, respect. But then I thought about the 2 years I'd spent lying awake next to him, wondering if I was crazy. About how often he'd looked me in the eye and told me he was just tired. So I clicked. The thread went back months. Messages between him and a woman he'd gone to college with. Not an ex, not someone local, just someone safe. Someone he could be honest with because she didn't have to live with the consequences. The first message hit like a punch. "How are things with you and Mindy?" Honestly? Not great. I don't know why I can't connect with her anymore. I scrolled. I feel nothing when she touches me. Then I feel guilty for feeling nothing. So it's easier to avoid it altogether. My chest burned. She keeps trying. Dates, flowers, trips. It just makes me feel worse because I know I should want those things. And I don't. I sat down without realizing it. Read another. I don't think I'm depressed. I just think maybe I'm not meant for marriage. Like I need more independence than this. Another message weeks later. Mindy asked me again if something was wrong, if there was someone else. I almost wish there was. It would be easier to explain. Instead, I just tell her I'm tired. Same excuse I always use. Same excuse. Same lie. And then, sometimes I wonder if we married too young. If I missed out on experiencing more. She's a good woman. Kind. Stable. Everything you're supposed to want. But I fantasize about being single. Dating. Having options. I close my eyes. Options. While I was home folding his shirts, Googling how to rekindle intimacy, blaming my reflection for his distance, he was fantasizing about a life without me. His friend responded kindly. Suggested therapy, suggested honesty, suggested talking to me. And every reply from him circled the same drain. It's complicated. I don't want to hurt her. I just need time to figure things out. Time. While I stayed in the dark, thinking I was the problem, I closed the laptop slowly. No tears. No shaking hands. Just quiet. There was no affair. No dramatic betrayal I could scream about. No villain to point at. Just emotional abandonment wrapped in politeness. In some ways, it hurt more than cheating. At least cheating has clarity. This was him checking out while keeping me around for stability. The shared rent, the clean house, the appearance of normal. A placeholder. I stood up and walked into the bedroom. Pulled a suitcase from the closet. Started packing. Clothes first. Toiletries. Camera. Gym shoes. Methodical. Calm. He found me halfway through. "What are you doing?" His voice cracked in that way people use when they're pretending not to panic. "I'm going to a hotel for a few days." "For what?" Alarm now. "What happened?" I paused, zipper halfway closed. "I saw your emails." The color drained from his face. "You went through my email?" "No," I said evenly. "I checked our bank account. It was open." He sat on the edge of the bed, anger flashing, then collapsing into embarrassment. "That was private." "Yeah," I replied, "and more honest than you've been with me in 2 years." "It's not what you think." I held up my hand. "It's exactly what I think." Silence. I zipped the bag. "You've been unhappy and uncertain," I continued, "but instead of being direct, you pushed me away while keeping me attached enough to maintain stability." "That's not fair," he said, eyes wet now. "Maybe not," I said softly, "but it's accurate." He didn't argue. I slung the bag over my shoulder. "How long will you be gone?" His voice was small now. "I don't know," I said. "I need to decide if there's anything here worth fighting for." "And me?" "You need to decide too." I left. The hotel room felt strange at first. Too quiet. Too neutral. But the relief came faster than I expected. The uncertainty that had haunted me for 2 years was gone, replaced with something painful, yes, but clear. I wasn't unwanted because I wasn't enough. I was unwanted because he didn't know who he wanted to be. And that wasn't something I could fix by trying harder. The days fell into a rhythm. Morning swims before sunrise, 30 laps in an empty pool, just me, the water, and my breath. Work during the day, focused, productive, free from the constant mental drain of wondering if I'd said or done the wrong thing. Gym in the evenings, dinner alone or with friends, reading real books, sleeping deeply. He called every day at first. Apologies, tears, anger, accusations. I listened. Didn't chase, didn't reassure, didn't argue. By day 5, the calls slowed. That hurt more than I expected. Was he adjusting already? Had he been hoping I'd leave so he wouldn't have to be the bad guy? On the 8th night, I went to a networking event downtown. I almost didn't go. But standing there, talking to strangers who didn't know me as the wife, who laughed at my jokes, asked questions, listened, I remembered something important. I was still a person. Not half of a failing marriage. Not a woman begging to be chosen. Just me. When I got back to the hotel, I had 3 missed calls from him. His voicemail was raw. Please come home. I miss you. We need to talk. Those words would have sent me running months ago. Now, I recognize the pattern. My withdrawal triggering his pursuit. Temporary correction, not transformation. I texted back, I need more time. The next morning, I drove to the coast alone. Walked the beach in a heavy jacket, wind cutting through me, waves steady and loud. And standing there, sand in my shoes, salt on my skin, I made myself a promise. Never again would I shrink myself to be more lovable. Never again would I tie my worth to someone else's confusion. Driving back at sunset, I knew it was time to go home. Not because he asked, but because whatever happened next needed to happen in the open. From strength, not desperation. I checked out of the hotel on a Thursday evening. Not rushed, not emotional. Deliberate. The drive home felt different, like I was returning to a place I knew, but as someone new. The neighborhood looked the same, but my perspective had shifted just enough to make everything feel unfamiliar. He opened the door before I could use my key. He looked worn down, hair pulled back like he hadn't bothered to style it, dark circles under his eyes, the kind of tired you can't fake. For a second, we just stood there, 2 people who shared a life, and suddenly didn't know how to stand in the same space anymore. You're back, he said quietly. I am, I replied, setting my bag down, but I'm not the same person who left. He nodded slowly. Neither am I. We sat in the living room, not too close, not too far. The rain started tapping against the windows, soft at first, then heavier, like the house itself was holding its breath. I've been thinking, he said finally. His hands were clasped so tight his knuckles were white. About why I pushed you away, why I lied instead of being honest. I stayed quiet. This was new. Before, I would have jumped in, reassured him, softened the moment, made it easier. I didn't do that anymore. At first, he continued, eyes on the floor, I really was exhausted. The promotion, the pressure, feeling like I had to prove myself every day. I nodded once, but somewhere along the way, it stopped being about being tired. He swallowed. It became fear. Fear of what? I asked calmly. He took a deep breath, like he was stepping into cold water. Of needing you. That landed harder than anger ever could have. My parents' marriage was a disaster, he said. You know that. I watched my mom give everything to my dad, her identity, her dreams, and when he left, she fell apart. I was 15. I promised myself I'd never let anyone have that kind of power over me. So you pushed me away, I said quietly. Yes, his voice cracked. I told myself I was protecting myself, that emotional distance was healthy, but really I was sabotaging us before we could hurt each other. And when I stopped trying, I asked. He looked up then, met my eyes. I panicked. The honesty hung between us. I stood and walked to the window, watching rain race down the glass. I can't go back to how things were, I said. I won't chase someone who isn't choosing me. I don't want that either, he said quickly. I want to try, really try. I turned to face him. Then it has to be different. No more excuses. No more hiding behind tired. Complete honesty, even when it's uncomfortable. He nodded. I want that. We didn't rush back into anything. I moved into the guest room that night, not as punishment, as protection. For 3 months, we lived with boundaries. Weekly conversations, real ones. Therapy-style honesty without a therapist in the room. Naming fears before they turned into distance. Some nights felt hopeful. Others felt painfully slow. More than once, I lay in the guest bed wondering if I was being too stubborn. And every time I remembered the 2 years. I stayed put. 6 months later, we took a weekend trip to a mountain cabin. No phones, no work, no escape. We talked while hiking about childhood wounds, attachment patterns, the ways we'd both contributed to the silence. At night, by the fire, conversation came easier than it had in years. The second evening, he reached for my hand. "I miss you," he said. Not us. Not the routine. Me. That night, we shared a bed again, not out of habit, but intention. Awkward, tender, real. The rebuilding wasn't smooth. Old triggers surfaced. Stress made him withdraw. Silence still made my chest tighten. The difference now was awareness. "I'm overwhelmed and need space tonight," he'd say. "I understand," I'd reply, without taking it as rejection. A year later, we sat at the same restaurant where our 4th anniversary had ended in silence. Same table, different people. "Do you ever regret it?" he asked quietly. "Walking away when you did?" I thought about it. "No," I said. "It saved me." He nodded. "And us." Maybe. Or maybe it just gave us the chance to rebuild honestly, or walk away with dignity. Either way, I'd learned something I'd never forget. Love isn't proven by how much you endure. It's proven by how much you're willing to walk away from to protect yourself. And if someone wants